You ever wonder how some of the most unethical, truly dangerous people manage to build these enormous fortunes and gain so much influence? It's a question that can make you pretty uncomfortable. We like to think that great wealth is a reward for creating something amazing, for real innovation. But sometimes it's the product of something much, much darker. It's born from manipulation, from exploitation, and from our systems failing to hold power in check. In this explainer, we're going to walk down that darker path, not to admire it, but to really understand how it works.
And that quote right there, that's really the key to this whole thing. This isn't just a story about one person's crimes. No, it's about the very architecture of power itself. It's about how influence is really built, how trust can be twisted and used as a weapon, and how the systems that are supposed to protect us can be turned inside out for personal gain. So here's what we're going to cover. We'll start with that uncomfortable truth about wealth. Then we'll dive right into the manipulator's mind. After that, we'll look at a real-world case study, expose the systemic failures, and try to figure out why justice can take so long. And finally, we'll pull it all together for the real lesson in all of this.
All right, let's start by pushing back on a huge assumption we have in our culture. The idea that being wealthy means you're a good person, or that you've earned it through merit. Now, of course, many fortunes are built on incredible ideas and a ton of hard work. But that's just not the only way to get to the top. There's another road, a much more destructive one.
And in this explainer, we're focusing on that second path. The point isn't to glorify it, but to learn to see the patterns. Because it's only when you understand how these people operate that you can spot the red flags and start to protect the very systems and people they go after.
So what is actually going on inside the head of someone who can manipulate their way to the very top? It's not about being a genius in the way we usually think about it. It's about having a very specific and very dangerous set of psychological tools. So let's open up the manipulator's toolkit.
Okay, what's fascinating here is how these traits all lock together to create this perfect illusion. They have this high social intelligence, right? So they can walk into any room, instantly read what powerful people want to hear, and then just become a mirror, reflecting it right back at them. But the real weapon is the charisma without a conscience. That deep-seated narcissism, the belief that the rules just don't apply to them, that's what turns social skills into something sinister. They become masters at exploiting trust, and every new person they win over is just another stepping stone.
Okay, theory is one thing, but let's see how this plays out in the real world. We're going to use Jeffrey Epstein here, not to be sensational, but as a kind of clinical case study. It's a way to see how that psychology we just talked about can be used to build immense wealth and power inside the systems we all live in.
At the time he died, Epstein's estate was worth almost $578 million. I mean, think about that. That's not just I'm comfortable money. That's a fortune that buys you private islands, a whole fleet of private jets, and the one thing that matters most, access. Access to the most powerful people on the planet. Which, of course, leads to the big question, where on earth did all that money come from?
You can forget that picture of some financial wizard juggling accounts for dozens of billionaires. That was the myth. The reality, as this chart makes pretty clear, was that the vast majority of his fortune, we're talking an estimated $370 million in fees, came from just two clients, the retail giant Les Wexner and the private equity billionaire Leon Black.
In this timeline, wow, it just perfectly shows his ability to bounce back. So in 2007, he loses his main benefactor, Wexner. His firm starts bleeding cash. The next year, he becomes a convicted felon. For pretty much anyone else, that's game over. But somehow, by 2012, he'd found a brand new financial lifeline in Leon Black, who then paid him $170 million over the next 5 years. He basically resurrected his entire fortune from the ashes.
And here's the kicker. Here's how he kept that fortune. By setting up shop in the U.S. Virgin Islands and using a special tax program there, Epstein paid an effective tax rate of just 4%. 4. That's a tiny fraction of what most regular people pay, and it shows you how a critical loophole in the system allowed him to stockpile hundreds of millions of dollars, almost tax-free.
And that brings us to a really crucial idea. One person, no matter how manipulative they are, can only get so far on their own. To reach that level of wealth and power, they need a system with cracks and vulnerabilities they can exploit. So it's time to zoom out from the individual and look at the architecture that actually made it all possible.
This right here, this is the engine that drives unethical power. It's a feedback loop. Step 1, money gets you in the room with powerful people. Step 2, that access lets you build influence, a reputation, a brand. And then, step 3,
That influence creates a kind of protective shield around you. It makes people hesitant to question you, and it helps you brush off scrutiny when red flags do pop up. It just keeps feeding itself, over and over.
And that whole cycle works because of these blind spots in the system. Elite circles often work on personal introductions, not background checks. Our financial systems are so murky, it's easy to hide where money is really coming from. And maybe the biggest one of all is that we, as a society, just tend to defer to wealthy people. We have this dangerous habit of assuming that if someone is rich, they must also be smart and trustworthy and credible.
So, you see all these warning signs, all these red flags. How does this kind of thing go on for decades? Well, the answer is in that powerful 1-2 punch of managing perception while using the protective shield that incredible wealth provides.
It's the one question everybody asks, right? It wasn't because nobody had any idea something was wrong. It's because the systems that are supposed to deliver accountability were stalled and manipulated and dodged for years. So how do you do it?
It's like you're looking at two completely different people. On the one hand, you've got this carefully built public image, the brilliant money manager, the generous philanthropist, the guy who's friends with presidents and scientists. And on the other hand, the documented reality. And what this shows is that a powerful public story, especially when it's backed up by powerful friends, can hide a horrifying truth right out in the open for a very, very long time.
And look, when the truth finally does start to bubble to the surface, that's when wealth becomes a weapon. It buys you the absolute best lawyers who know how to create delays and find every loophole. It pays for private settlements to silence victims with non-disclosure agreements. And it lets you call on your powerful connections to make sure that even when consequences do come, like his 2008 conviction, they're so lenient they're almost meaningless. Wealth literally buys you time.
Okay, so let's pull all of this together. After going through all of this darkness, what's the fundamental lesson we should be taking away? It's actually a pretty simple but profound one. It's about how we think about wealth and power.
At the absolute core of this entire systemic failure is a powerful little quirk of human psychology. It's called social proof. This was the engine of his influence. His network wasn't built on his actual achievements. It was built on a chain reaction. Once a powerful person like Les Wexner gave him the stamp of approval, everyone else just assumed he was legit. It's a domino effect of trust. Each powerful new connection served as proof for the next one, creating this aura of credibility that was completely hollow.
So the point here isn't to just throw our hands up in despair. It's a call for vigilance. It's about teaching ourselves to see the red flags, like that slick charisma that has no real character behind it. It's about demanding more transparency in our financial systems and real accountability from our institutions. And really, it's about trying to build systems that reward actual value and ethics, not just the appearance of success and a list of powerful friends.
Understanding stories like this isn't really about focusing on the darkness. It's about using them as a light to expose the deep cracks in the foundations of our own systems. It shows us how the very architecture of power can fail. And that leaves all of us with the most important question there is. Now that we can see the cracks so clearly, what are we going to do to fix them?